Hi everyone, welcome. We're just waiting for everyone to come in from the waiting room, so we'll just give it a few minutes. Hello, thank you for joining us. We're just waiting a few minutes to give everyone a chance to join. Hello, I think more and more people are joining, so I'll just still give it a few minutes. Okay, I think people are still filtering in, but I think we can probably get started. So hello, it's so lovely to welcome you to this event. Thank you so much for being here. Today is one of our Disabled Leaders Network events on getting into equality, diversity and inclusion, otherwise known as EDI, usually this side of the pond, and DEI, the other side. So yes, just to clarify what the event will be on today. We're really looking forward to learning more. But before we get started, just a few access things. So my name is Amelia and I manage the network, and I am a white 20-something woman with long blonde hair, sitting in front of an orange wall with a snakeskin top on. And I'm really pleased to welcome you today. We have British Sign Language interpretation on the call, which you should be able to access now. The sign language interpreters, BB and Michelle, should be pinned. So, you should be able to just access that without needing to do much your end. We would recommend you join, if possible, from a desktop, from a laptop or a computer, because that really helps to access all of the features. But please do let us know if you have any issues with access. If you put it in the chat, in the Q&A box, we will be able to help you. We also have captions enabled for this session, and you should be able to find the stream text link in the chat. But again, please do message if you have any issues with this. As always, we're very, this is a webinar, so we can't see or hear you as the audience, so feel free to relax. We're very, if you've got caring responsibilities or health stuff going on, feel free to come and go as you need, and we just hope it will be a useful session for you. But we really do want to hear from you, so we would love for you to ask questions and share your thoughts, and if you could do that via the Q&A box in Zoom, that would be really helpful. So I think that's all the housekeeping. But before we get started into our main session, for those of you who aren't aware, the Disabled Leaders Network is funded by the Snowdon Trust, which is an amazing charity that supports disabled students. And so I just wanted to welcome Katie to just talk to you a little bit about their current opportunity that might be of interest to you.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks, Amelia. So I'm Katie. As Amelia said, I'm from the Snowdon Trust. I'm the Communications and Fundraising Officer. I'm a white woman with short blonde hair and glasses, and I'm wearing a green top. So I just wanted to come and talk to you a lot today about Snowdon Master Scholarships, as we're currently open for applications. So for anyone who doesn't know, we offer scholarships of up to £30,000 for exceptional disabled masters applicants. So we award up to £15,000 for tuition and £15,000 for living costs. To apply, you must be a disabled student with UK home fee status, and you must be applying for a full master's degree that's starting in kind of the upcoming academic year, so 2026 to 2027. Any subject area is welcome, so any master's degree that you're applying for, you're welcome to apply. Essentially, we want to look for the next disabled leaders. So if you want to get into disability leadership and advocacy, we really want you to apply. Basically looking for people who want to use their lived experiences of disability to create change. And as part of this, all of these successful Snowden Master Scholars are invited to join the Disabled Leaders Network. So you'll also get access to the really lovely supportive community. So as I say, applications are now open until 19th of March. So there's a stage 1 application, which is an application form. So if you complete that by 19th of March, then all the successful applicants will be invited to complete a stage 2 application. And you'll find out about that by 16th of April. And then stage 3 is an interview, which will take place in June. So that's the application process. So if all of that sounds really exciting, please apply and go to snowdentrust.org and get in touch with us if you have any questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Katie. Yes, I would just second the encouragement to apply if that sounds of interest. And many of our members have gone through the scholarship process and really benefited from the support of Snowden. And obviously we continue to benefit from that support as a network. So yeah, I would recommend applying if that sounds like something that would be relevant to your situation. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
So today's session, we're going to be discussing how to get into equality, diversity and inclusion sort of as a career, how to draw on your lived experience and find opportunities that might enable you to use those, and just generally sort of learn more about this topic, which is obviously quite a topical topic at the moment with everything going on in the world. So I would love to welcome our first speaker, Miriam Bentley-Rose, who is the head of EDI at the Wildlife Trusts. And it would be great to hear your perspective, Miriam.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. Yeah, really great to be here. So for access reasons, I'm a white woman with long, dark, curly hair in a ponytail, wearing glasses and a cream quarter zip. And I have a woodland behind me. So I always like to have a backdrop of trees, so it makes me feel a little bit closer to nature. Fabulous. So as it did mention in my bio, I've been working in EDI for over 30 years now. And I quite often get people say, I didn't know EDI was that old. I thought it was a new thing. It's not a new thing. It's just had a lot of names over the years. And it is, as Amelia said, quite a topic high in the news at the moment. So we're hearing more about it. But yes, when I started, it was called Equal Opportunities way back when. So some of you may remember that, but most of you probably don't. And my background comes from education. So I started working with SEND pupils in mainstream schools, helping with doing access audits of school buildings, looking at adaptations to the curriculum, and being also that voice and that advocate for parents who are pushing for education and healthcare plans, as they're now called. So supporting families, but very much on the sort of disability access to education. I knew from a very young age I wanted to make a difference. I was going to be a nurse, but that never materialized. But I knew that I wanted to make sure when I got up every day I was making a difference to somebody. And that really was my passion and my drive. And your passion and drive is one of the most important things you can have when working. It's the one thing that keeps you going. It's the one thing that gets you up when you've had knockbacks. So yeah, I'm quite excited that a lot of you are passionate about this, which is wonderful. There are various routes into EDI. I've done pretty much both of them. So I'd say there's an academic route now through degrees, qualifications. That wasn't really around when I started. So I adapted my bachelor's degree, which was in human biology, and I sort of specialised in the ergonomics of disability and ageing and learning difficulties. So I managed to pick the modules to give me that sort of EDI slant on my bachelor's degree. As a mature student years later, I then did a Master of Education degree with the Open University, and that was specialising in equality and diversity. But that was then quite a new thing. And since then, I've also done my Chartered Management Institute Level 7 in Strategic EDI. I would say some of that is to verify for me that all the all the education that I've picked up over the years, the experience working in different organizations and different sectors, it kind of validated that yes, I have got the knowledge and the skills to do what I'm saying I'm going to do. And I've moved about sectors as well. So few dips into the charity sector earlier on in my career. But most recently I came from local authority. And have come back into the charity sector because it's by far one of the best places to work, in my opinion. So I now work, as Amelia said, for the Wildlife Trusts. A bit of information on those. They're quite unique. We're a federation, so we have 47 separate charities. So every local wildlife trust that you've heard of is a completely independent charity. And then we have this central team that supports all of them. So I'm head of EDI in the central team, meaning that I cover the entire of the UK and Crown dependencies as well. And that means that I work with over 3,000 staff, 47 different chief executives and 250 trustees. So completely different to working for single charities, but brilliant because we've got so much knowledge, input and diversity in those groups that really helps us when we're looking at everything through an EDI lens. So my role is EDI. I also took on careers a couple of years ago as well, because a lot of the charity sector and specifically the ENGO sector is working really hard on diversifying our talent pipeline. So we know that we're not fully diverse at the moment, specifically people of colour, very underrepresented in our sector. So we're doing a lot of awareness raising and a lot of careers work so that people from everywhere and every background can come and feel like they belong within the Wildlife Trust, and it's a place where they feel safe and that they can stay. So it's quite interesting, and I think I'm probably a little bit different to maybe some of the other speakers on this because my role is internal and external. So internally, I do the HR and the people and culture side of things. So that involved when I first started working on our federation-wide strategy, which I was quite lucky that they hadn't signed it off when I started 5 years ago. So I was able to tweak some of the wording to inclusive language, which was wonderful because now it's in the strategy, we have to do it. So that was quite good that I was able to do that. But I also work on policies, policy design, inclusive recruitment, as I've said, has been a huge section of ours as well. I set up 6 staff networks. We started accessibility passports for staff with disabilities so that they had a framework where they could talk about their needs to their line managers, and then that document would travel with them across the federation so you don't have to keep having the same conversations. And then a big thing for me was our diversity survey and diversity report. So we now do an annual diversity survey which surveys all of our staff and our trustees. And then every year I write a public diversity report. So this is available on our website. It gives the demographic statistics. We are transparent. We will tell anybody where we are and where we're not doing well. But the report also has a lot of the foundational work in it too. So we don't just want to recruit tokenistically to try and fill quotas. We need to actually make sure that we've removed any systemic disadvantages within the organisation. So there's a lot of background work that we get out in that report as well. And I believe we're the only organisation in our sector that actually publishes that annually, which is great. And if you read the report, a huge part of it for me is lived experience. I am massively passionate that all the work that we do is driven by lived experience. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But to touch as well on my external work that I get to do working as head of EDI with the Wildlife Trust, and that's about access and engagement for everyone. So we're talking about access to nature, access to our nature reserves, but also we know that not everybody can travel to our nature reserves. So therefore, we've done a huge amount of work in the last few years looking at local green spaces, so spaces that are local to different communities and working with them to create those into nature spaces and wildlife habitats. And that's probably one of, I mean, I enjoy the HR side, but being able to create inclusive spaces for everybody is wonderful. And we launched a report last year called A Space for Everyone, which is literally a one-stop guide for any landowners to create inclusive spaces. And it's got loads of case studies in there. It's been informed again by groups with lived experience. So yeah, so I'm kind of lucky I get to do two different types of EDI, internally and externally. And another great thing when we think externally, so we have quite a few people that get in touch with us saying, actually, I have a disability and I can't leave my house, or my husband's been taken into a hospice. What can we do to make sure that these people are still experiencing nature? So we have a whole page full of webcams where people can be outdoors whilst being indoors. And I find this works quite well for me. I am a wheelchair user. I will never get on Skomer Island in Wales to look at our puffins, but I can have the webcam streaming whilst I'm working, which gives me that little insight. So I do get to see some places I wouldn't ordinarily get to see. So we've been looking at different methods of maintaining that connection to nature for different people with disabilities. So I touched on lived experience just a little bit. We are all made up of multiple characteristics. None of us are just in a single little silo. And none of us, those of us who have got the same disability, we are completely different with different experiences. So if you are looking at getting into EDI and you've got that lived experience, that is really something to sell, because it's so important that that's heard, and organisations now know it's really important that they communicate and talk to and test things with people with lived experience. But there is a balance there as well. I was able-bodied when I started off in EDI. I became an unexpected wheelchair user in 2014. So my lived experience came quite suddenly, and was an aspect I hadn't really been looking at before. But for those of us with disabilities that are also working, it's a tough balance because we get exhausted, we get tired. Some days you get up and you're in so much pain you can't really think straight. Other days you're absolutely on it and raring to go. So there's a certain amount of protection as well, and there are loads of organisations out there that thoroughly understand this now. So yeah, really important that we look after ourselves when we're doing this work too. It is not a particularly pleasant place at times in EDI. You'll know all the rhetoric that's going on at the moment from America coming over, and also with some of our own politicians in the UK. It's not a pleasant space, and I've had people come to me who work in EDI going, have I still got a career? Is this still going to be something that's happening in 2 or 3 years' time? I believe it will. It may have a different name in a different format, but we will still very much be needed. But yeah, it's a balance, and sometimes you'll see if you follow us on social media and we put a post out about Pride, you'll see the kind of comments that we're getting coming back to us. And so we do have to be a bit resilient as well and make sure that we're, as I've said, looking after ourselves. So charity sector EDI is a little bit different to other sectors because we don't have a lot of profit that we're ploughing into it. We're using grant funding to deliver our EDI work. But it is worth knowing that big funders, so the National Lottery, SB Fairburn, when they're funding charities, are now looking for evidence of EDI work, which is great for us. So they are wanting to see EDI policies, our progress, our action plans. So charities have to be able to deliver that. So a lot of charities do have an EDI team. Some of them have shrunk in recent years because of the issues around the rhetoric and also funding. But it is something that charities are still having to deliver. So that's definitely that space within the charity sector where we are very much needed, and where we are being externally monitored as well from different places. So 2 things to close out with, really. Firstly, if you're interested in a career in EDI, utilise your social media. Follow the people who are already doing the job that you want to do, and then you'll see what happens on a daily basis. There's also quite a lot of free training that you'll find on social media, so make sure that you're signing up to those as well. If you can volunteer, that's great, but I understand not everybody has the opportunity to volunteer. But again, looking at that free training that's happening. And finally, I still get to make a difference every single day of my life doing this. So if that's something that you're really passionate about, this is absolutely the right place and the right space for you to be. So yeah, let's just keep making a difference. Thanks, Amelia.
Thank you so much. That's a lovely note to end on. That's so fascinating. I think we've had quite a few people very interested in the document you were talking about with regards the landowners making their spaces more inclusive. So yes, I think we will come to questions at the end, but lots of questions coming through. So thank you so much, Miriam. Wonderful. I think we're going now to Alice, who is the let me get your title right, the Global Lead of Diversity and Inclusion. Is that right,
That's
Alice?
absolutely fine.
Okay, at Schroders. So I will hand over to you if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I must say I'm a bit daunted following up from Miriam now because it's such an impressive experience and so much to take away, even for me, who's in a similar role. So yeah, thank you for that. For accessibility reasons, my name's Alice. I'm a white female with sort of bouncy brown hair, tied up in a ponytail. I'm wearing a greyish sweatshirt, and I'm joining from my home office, but it's a very boring, blurred background. Nothing so interesting as a nice treescape. So I thought a good place to start would be, what do I do now at Schroders? And then I will backtrack a little bit to sort of how I got into it and sort of how I've ended up here, I suppose, from my career to date. So in a nutshell, I am a sort of one-man band, one-person centre of excellence, focused wholly on inclusion and diversity. So I sit within our talent team. But since I joined the business 18 months ago, DEI has sat within different areas of people and culture. We've sort of moved around a little bit, but yeah, now landed in the talent team, which for me is amazing because it means that day to day I am working with the people who, in terms of sort of that long-term change, how are we getting diverse talent into the business? How are we making sure there is fair access, to progression and promotion opportunities, and how are we retaining that talent? I'm sat with those people every day. So, in the past, it's been sort of a separate inclusion and diversity strategy, a separate talent strategy, which is all very well. But unless you're all singing from the same proverbial hymn sheet, there's only so far you can go. So this year is the first time where actually we've got true co-creation of the talent strategy alongside the I&D strategy, which is fantastic for me. In terms of what I do day to day, so in kind of no particular order, there is the day-to-day management of our 17 thriving employee networks. And I did say 17, which came as somewhat of a surprise to me after I joined the business. And I kind of said, excuse me, what? But yeah, 17. They are amazing. I'm so lucky to work with the chairs of our networks. Are brilliant. They are really driven, fantastic people who all do this voluntarily alongside their busy day jobs. But our employee networks span from disability, Black professionals. There is one for each of the main religious groups, socioeconomic diversity, early careers. So there really is something for everybody. And so, as you can imagine, that takes up quite a lot of time in terms of kind of advocacy for those groups, supporting their day-to-day activities, helping them with kind of best practice, what's going on in the industry, and also being the kind of link between those groups and the people and culture team and senior management. So making sure that their voices are heard within critical business decisions, particularly those that are going on within people and culture. There's also the management and optimization of our external inclusion partnerships. So we work with lots of different kind of businesses that are subject matter experts on inclusion, and they might be focused around specific diversity facets or more broadly, but it's kind of the working with those and making sure that we are keeping up with best practice and networking, but also able to give back so that we're eliciting industry-wide change rather than just doing great work internally and then kind of leaving everybody else to it. Then a really key part is the setting and delivering on our global I&D strategy. So each and every year, what do we want to achieve? We have our sort of 2030 aspirations, which are which puts kind of into writing where we want to be by 2030 in terms of transparency, in terms of diverse representation, in terms of inclusion. And then within that, making sure that, for instance, our key policies, ways of working, strategies are all really inclusive. So a lot of kind of getting in other people's business and asking lots of questions about, well, why are you doing it that way? And have you thought about X, Y, Z? And again, kind of acting then as the conduit between those policies and policy holders and the different groups that they may impact, to make sure that different experiences or ways of thinking have been considered. Another big part of it, which I must admit isn't my favourite thing to do, but is a big part of it, is a kind of data analysis piece. So we collect an awful lot of data. So we've got a diversity profile, which we ask everybody to fill in. I then track that and provide quarterly reporting to the business. So I go to business area leads, I let them know where they are progressing at the time, and then kind of consult with them about how they can improve their processes and, you know, look to address any issues that are coming up before they progress sort of too far. So it's really interesting them looking at the way that different business areas work and the different triggers that you need to pull in kind of the different areas, because often the differences sort of between business areas are as distinct as between us and kind of other businesses. So it's really interesting. And then the target, providing that sort of targeted support. Within that, I am kind of the business's subject matter expert. So if somebody was needed to help consult on kind of anything I&D related, I would be involved in that. There's the part of sort of overseeing and supporting ERG and other inclusion events, and lots of sort of networking and best practice sharing. I could go on all day, because, as I say, as a one person kind of acting as an entire EDI team, there is an awful lot on. And, you know, I really did resonate with Miriam's comment about it can often be quite a tiring role, especially, you know, if you're really passionate about it and you're trying to be everything for everyone and it's busy. So there's definitely a piece about kind of remembering to also fill your own cup and giving yourself that space and time to decompress and remembering to look after that, because I think it comes from the best of places where you're trying to make everything happen for everyone, but then you also have to be realistic of the fact that that has to be balanced with a business strategy, it has to be balanced with budgeting responsibilities and all of that great stuff. So it can't always just be, let's put on loads of really wonderful big events that make everybody really happy, or saying yes to everything. There are often quite difficult decisions to be made, where actually, whilst you're advocating for protected groups, you are also a representative of the business, which can sometimes be quite challenging. A little bit about how I got into this. So going right back, I studied psychology at undergrad, and then got a job very quickly after that, just kind of doing whatever I could find to enable me to look at what was next. And if I'm perfectly honest, I started looking at some of the pathways that would come from doing psychology as an undergrad, and lots of them involved an awful lot more studying, qualifications, and I thought, I'm done with education after sort of 18 years of that. But one that popped up that looked really interesting to me was occupational psychology, or business psychology as it's sometimes referred to. And the reason that really appealed was because it was a really nice balance between sort of the corporate world and getting involved in business type things, which I'd really enjoyed, but then also applying psychology. And, you know, for me, both from prior experiences, you know, I remember being a child and at different times, both parents losing jobs or family members having a difficult time at work, and really seeing the impact that had on an entire family, an entire community sometimes when that went wrong. And so I thought, actually, you know, same as Miriam, I really wanted to help people and make a difference in their lives, and thought, well, because most of us spend most of our time at work, actually a really impactful way of being able to do that would be to look at what kind of roles I could get on optimizing the workplace experience for people. So I ended up doing a master's in occupational psychology, came out of that, worked for a talent consultancy for sort of 5-6 years. Absolutely loved that. And that was developing and running lots of different talent programs. So things like graduate programs, leadership development, all of those sorts of things. I then moved to an internal talent management role for sort of 5 or 6 years. And that was really where I kind of took a bit of a sidestep into inclusion and diversity, because I was being asked to, as part of my role, do things like, or could you develop a female leadership program? To which the answer was like, yes, I could. But have we thought about the structural things that are in place that are stopping women from progressing here? Because I think it's, an oversight, if not offensive, to just assume that it's because they're, lacking in confidence or particular skills that men have. So I said, let's do this, but let's actually address some of those sort of fundamental issues. Probably made a bit of a pain of myself, if I'm honest. But then after doing that, I ended up doing a lot of that sort of stuff side of desk, because people know that that's what you're interested in. And then post George Floyd, suddenly there was kind of more of a push for a role like that to be a full-time role, like I think there was in a lot of businesses. And so initially the business had gone out and said, oh, we know you're doing this right now. We think that we should get somebody else in because it's becoming a full-time role, so that you could kind of go back to your other role. And I put my hand up and I said, actually, I'd really like to try this as a full-time role, if that's okay, and moved over them to doing that as a full-time role, which was fantastic. Was there for sort of 5 or 6 years, and then took voluntary redundancy from there about 2 years ago, and then moved over into Schroders. So yeah, a bit of a sort of varied and unexpected pathway there. I just wanted to end with sort of a couple of thoughts or tips. For me, I think the really critical thing has been being open to experiences and sort of putting my hand up for opportunities. Whilst there were sort of initiatives that weren't necessarily completely aligned to the work that I was doing at the time, I just made myself available to do things that I thought were interesting. And I think that you will get recognised for doing things like that, hopefully, but then also don't be afraid to tell people if you've not been recognised for doing those things. One of the key pieces of information or advice that I actually got from a mentor many years ago was about, when you're thinking about a career, actually have an idea of the type of role that you want in terms of kind of characteristics rather than job title. So, for me, it was important to me that I had a role which was linked to psychology. I wanted it to be a role that energized me. I wanted to help people. And, since having kids 5 years ago, that's been really important to me. Also, having a role which enables me to achieve a work-life blend, which I am satisfied with. And that will obviously look different for everybody else. And the reason behind why you want that might look different. But I would say that that's a real starting place. Think about that rather than, I want to be an EDI practitioner, I want to be an EDI consultant. Think about, this is what energizes me. And then start thinking about the types of roles, because different businesses call it different things. And actually, sometimes it might be worth just getting into a related role because it has some of those elements that you find really interesting, but then being open to kind of the lateral moves and not always the next step up. And finally, I would just say, find out, it's kind of linked to the energizing point, but just find what you really love and kind of try and get into something related to that. Because I think that whilst it is difficult, and believe me, sometimes I've been sat at the end of the day, head in hands, thinking, why am I doing this? But whilst it is difficult, if you are doing something you love, I think it shows. That passion shines through. And it makes you get up every morning and kind of dust yourself off and go at it again. So yeah, I would say that if this is something that you really love, absolutely, it might be difficult, but go out there and get it. Be curious, see what you can find.
Thank you so much, and another great ending for a section. Thank you. It's really interesting. It's clear that both you and Miriam have got such passion for what you do, and I'm finding it really interesting to consider the different ways in and the different sort of ways to do this work, even if you don't necessarily have the formal job title. So thank you so much. I would now like to hand over to Sophia Moreau, who is an award-winning EDI consultant, who's going to share with us a bit more about her perspective.
Thanks so much. My mind's still full from what's been shared by Miriam and Alice so far, so I'm going to be digesting that later on, but I feel really privileged to be here. In terms of my journey to EDI, I suppose all of us probably will have journeys that are not conventional because there isn't a singular pathway. Although it's had many different names over time, including during my own career. So I've been working in the EDI or DEI, I think it was E&D in my first role, since about 2011. So it was shortly after the Equality Act 2010 was introduced in the UK. But I've worked in the UK and with US parties. So I'm currently visiting scholar for the University of Northern Kentucky on DEI primarily, but discrimination law in general. So I've been doing roles that were initially my first non-call center unrelated job that I ever had, in fact, was as an equality and diversity advocate, as it was called at the time. So this was in the education sector. It was a part-time role. It actually, in many ways, had no form and no fixed brief, which meant I had a lot of freedom in order to shape it, which doesn't often happen in very early career roles. I was very, very young at the time, and it was incredible. Curiosity can often be a superpower. So if there's nothing else you take away from what I say today, ignore anything about my CV. Curiosity is a superpower. Be an asker of why. Think critically and follow the things that you're interested in or curious about. Sometimes you'll discover something, whether it is a problem, such as an inequality, a problem that perhaps had been categorized as maybe we need to advertise more, as opposed to, is there a reason why people are not using that service? Have they perhaps experienced challenges or adverse things happening to them when they tried to enter that space? So be curious, be considerate, and remember to follow your interests and ideas and be open to new experiences, because the path is sometimes shaped by what you end up discovering and being open to and curious about, rather than what was already shaped and there and conventional. So I started down this profession and actually entering into leadership within it before I even had a degree. I lectured at a university in America before I'd even studied in one. So I'm not saying that that's easy to do. There's still a move happening and it's ongoing to really clarify, as part of this work that we do and as part of the recommendations that I make as a consultant and that I was making when I was in-house as an employee at organizations, that degrees are not required to do many roles. There are some roles where maybe, for example, if you are an accountant or a lawyer, then the chances are there's a qualification required, but that's because of that professional, that specialism, or because someone is an academic. It's not because all roles inherently require that. So there's a lot of mindset shifting that's involved in how we even conceive how careers form. I've, in many contexts, when I was in-house in the charity sector, for example, I was very often the only person of colour in senior leadership, if I wasn't the only woman, then I was perhaps the only woman of a very young age. So I think in my earliest leadership roles, I was about 24, 25. Didn't talk about it at the time, but I'm open about it now, perhaps because I have a bit more liberty and autonomy now. So power dynamics do feed in, even when you are in the seat of leadership. I would say that in terms of the practical aspects of EDI or DEI, and I use different terminology, I care more about the substance of the words we use rather than the ordering of letters. So I will, if I use both, there's a reason for that. That's my approach to language. Just wanted to clarify that. So in the end, I've now done training, learning and development, and no 2 days will look the same in terms of that. I've done everything from inclusive and culturally competent safeguarding training to, for instance, anti-racism training. This afternoon, I'm going to be delivering to a public sector body disability awareness training for line managers. So I've discovered I really love designing training and sort of responding almost prescriptively to the needs that emerge and looking at, okay, what sort of training might be beneficial to address that? And very often in other areas of work I've done, they've ended up feeding into how I think about training. So, for example, another area of work I do is I run a complaint service. So I'm not the only investigator now. I have a wonderful colleague of mine. But we do also look at disputes when people have complained, when there's been sometimes a whistleblowing letter, when sometimes illegalities have been stated as having occurred somewhere and someone needs to go and look into it. And I never thought that I'd look at that. I always thought that that would be quite negative and challenging and work that would perhaps not bring joy to my life, because it's important that you also enjoy what you're doing. But I did find that it was really fulfilling because I'd been in positions and I'd witnessed things, particularly when I was in advocacy roles, when I was perhaps supporting others, whether at a volunteer advice clinic for people facing discrimination, or whether I was volunteering on a helpline for people who'd faced perhaps maternity discrimination. There were so many cases of complaints that were perhaps poorly investigated or allegations that were not taken seriously that led to problems further down the road, whether it's someone leaving an organisation, someone developing health conditions due to the stress that it caused them, or an organisation also perhaps not changing a policy or practice that could have very easily prevented that. So it was a very fulfilling area of work, and at least the aim of doing as impartial an approach and as robust a one as possible, and trying to take pride in preventing problems in the future and making real recommendations to put things on the right track, ended up being quite fulfilling. But that's not my main focus area of work. I prefer supporting and training other investigators and supporting organisations to have investigation skills to handle things appropriately. A large aspect of my work is sort of doing that, but for organisations. So I do a lot of auditing. I'll go into organisations, whether it's a charity or it might be sometimes a small business. It might sometimes be an accreditation body for standards in a really niche production facilities, for example. It really ranges, where I might then look at all their policies and procedures, tell them what should probably be amended in order to be compliant with different regulations, but also so they're actually usable. Like, does a first time manager in your organization who's leading people for the first time, who's previously in a role where they're delivering tasks rather than managing others and may not have had training, do they know how to implement that policy? When you're giving discretion to people and it says, okay, but discuss this with your line manager or discuss this with the team, do people know how to apply things consistently and fairly within their scope of discretion? Also, sometimes when you're going in and you're looking at things, you'll end up discovering things because you're talking to people as an independent party. So you're getting that lived experience. Maybe people are more frank and open about things, or perhaps also they've been speaking for a while and saying, oh, we really think that we should move away from, for example, having really inflexible holidays because not everyone observes the same religious holidays, and it may be better to have an allocation of leave that can be used flexibly. So people may have been saying that internally for like 3, 4 years, but sometimes a consultant bringing that information together, analyzing what that means for the organization, how that can have benefits, etc., putting the information together and embedding it in other recommendations, and really guiding perhaps leadership through understanding the different options and what significance they have. Also drafting a strategy or working with them to draft their own strategy, holding workshops, looking at who you can involve in developing a strategy, trying to understand what a strategy even means. What does it need to do? Is there a template, or is it just asking a clear set of questions to figure out your direction? I loved working flexibly with different organizations on various aspects of EDI. Sometimes I'll be going in and I'll be doing a reasonable adjustments assessment where you basically look at what sort of adjustments for this person in this particular environment would be helpful. Perhaps they've had disability adjustments in other organizations. Maybe they have recently experienced a change in their health. And what does that mean for their access to the office space? I very often work in partnerships with my other consultants and associates that I work with now. I did not intend at all, if you asked me 5 years ago, I would not have it said that I intend to become a business owner or a business leader or director. That was not what I set out to do. I just wanted to follow my interests with a bit more flexibility and be master of my own destiny, if that's even possible, and I don't think it is. So it's something that ended up, I surprised myself, and I had coaching. I didn't actually take it as seriously as perhaps I could have and commit to, you know what, it's okay for me to expand. It's okay for me to think about how I want to shape this and not be responsive all the time, because I had a bit of permission and coaching and guidance that you know what, Sophia, you're already a founder. You wanted to do things differently. Maybe this is an opportunity to build what you couldn't really see before. Maybe you can think about what sort of manager you'd like to be in an organization you're shaping from scratch rather than going into environments and sometimes facing the challenges of navigating change when I'm also internal, which is not a negative thing. It was incredibly impactful. I so often will see the incredible work that internal heads of and directors of EDI will do. And I do still sometimes work for 2 days a week with clients as their fractional head of EDI or fractional director of EDI for sometimes 4 year stints. So I've seen various aspects of it, and I haven't decided to stick with one particular subcategory. I actually end up shaping the projects that I take on and also the team I end up working with for that particular need to what works for our values and a good match and that we can deliver on it, but also what works for my life, what works for the working patterns and the way that we like to work as a team. And being really frank about, you know what, this isn't for us and this is. So I would say curiosity is a superpower. Listen to your limits. Also, don't think that there is one way to work. So you can absolutely be, for example, a leader of a department that works completely flexibly. I have met leaders who, for example, they might be around for particular meetings that others need to be involved in the daytime, but their hours of peak performance and activity are actually, one said, 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. And then they just schedule emails that go out. So the reports they're writing between 8 p.m. and 1 a.m., they schedule them to go out. So question the status quo. Curiosity is a superpower. Don't absorb too many limiting beliefs about what can or cannot be done, because very often the work of an EDI professional, and especially an EDI leader, a lot of leadership is thinking, you know what, let's look into that, let's see what's possible, and try and be that for others as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sophia. Oh, I'm really inspired by all of your what all of our speakers have shared today. It's I think it's really interesting whether you want to go into EDI or not. I think it's just so wonderful to hear three different women who have all reached such levels of their career and all approached it in different ways, and that's just really great to hear. So thank you so much. I think we've had lots of questions come through, so I'm trying to pick out the seemingly the most common questions that people seem to want answers to. So I think one question is sort of navigate, and I'll come to each of you if that's okay, navigating when you face barriers or resistance, or so whether that might be a funding issue to implementing the change, or whether it might be an attitude kind of barrier, how you navigate that, and sort of how you navigate it practically maybe, but also maybe just how you kind of don't let it affect you as much, or how you sort of mentally deal with that as part of, because that seems like it's quite a part of an EDI role. So I don't know if anyone wants to answer first.
I don't mind answering. So I wasn't sure whether to raise hand or unmute, so I physically raised my hand. What I would say is there's different types of resistance that you will face. So similar to what Miriam has described earlier on, I'd done both internal and external DEI. So I've been a head of advocacy, a head of communications, etc. before. And sometimes the resistance that you'd face is to how frank you're being, or even giving problems their names, which is so much of the ethical duty that we have as EDI professionals and EDI leaders. Whereas it's particularly when it's external, sometimes there's fear of, oh, but if the tides of public narrative or political view or corporate fears arise, then will we regret having, again, given problems their names, really stood by with conviction what we're trying to achieve as far as change goes. And sometimes that's a process. It doesn't mean you can't get there. It just means maybe you need to get buy-in internally. It's how you work with others. It's trying to understand the particular blockers and getting them to surface where their resistance is coming from. Because sometimes it's just that they wanted to be consulted a few more times, or for you to walk them through the rationale and the framework and how you've considered how you're going to approach it. Sometimes the resistance you'll face will be to pointing out a problem and perhaps someone feeling, but that happened in my department. Is this a personal criticism? Or sometimes it will be fear of change. And generally speaking, everyone, including me, there is some struggle with change. Change can often feel unwelcome. So a lot of the resistance that you'll face will actually be in the form, particularly if it's internal, like policies, practices, addressing things that arise, will be change management and careful communication. A huge amount of it is internal communication or external communication.
Thank you. Miriam or Alice, did you want to come in and add anything?
Don't think there's too much to add. Sophie's really hit the nail on the head there. Absolutely. For us as our organisation, it's been a journey of boosting confidence as well. People not feeling confident to get involved, to have conversations. As Sophia's already said as well, terminology is a big one. We have a duty to say it as it is, to not to hide things, not to change things too much. There's quite a lot of research in the ENGO sector that highlights the fact that leaders have a complete lack of understanding as to where to start. And I think, again, that goes back around to this building confidence. We've had to do a lot of work with comms and media teams to get them more confident about being outspoken and to say as it is, and to not worry about those negative responses that you get in and feel you need to jump and defend. You don't need to jump and defend, and a lot of time they're bots anyway. So it's that, the big thing's confidence, definitely.
Great, thank you. Alice, did you want to add anything?
I mean, yeah, the only thing I was going to add was it's sort of a resilience point also. I think for me, I started off wanting to be able to really right the wrongs of the world. And you go into it with the best of intentions, but there is also sort of your own well-being and sanity that you have to consider. And so, yeah, I do think it's a sort of resilience point, but I think in most cases where you're open and honest with people about the realms of the possible, then it's okay, because it can feel a little bit tough sometimes when you're really trying to help, a particular group, and then actually the business just can't meet their requests or expectations. So yeah, finding a way that you can then sort of dust yourself off, or looking for then ways in which you seeing that as an opportunity to look at other ways of how you can do things, I think. But yeah, it's definitely a sort of resilience point.
Excellent, thank you. I think another question that seems to have come up a lot is any advice in terms of getting experience to help you, for your CV kind of thing, that would help, would sort of be something that people might be looking for when employing EDI professionals, but also what skills you think are needed for this role that maybe people can develop in unconventional ways, and sort of what they should really be highlighting in their skill set. And yeah, any advice for kind of that entry level getting into this career?
I don't mind going first this time. I would say adaptability is a massive piece. You have to step change often and quickly. 1 minute I'll be talking to senior leaders about why this should be, a point on executive level scorecards. And the next minute it will be a talk to the people who are starting their careers, the early careers guys, about, how they're going to get into it and what's important from that side of things. And at the same time, because there is often so much going on and really varied things, you do have to be able to kind of step change quite quickly. So anything that you can do on adaptability, I think we all said it when we were kind of talking before, but the curiosity piece, if somebody says something, not just going, okay, cool, why? And, I think people sometimes don't want to be seen as challenging, but it's not challenging. Like, it shows that you're inquisitive. It shows that you're interested. So just getting to the kind of why behind what somebody's saying, I think, is really powerful. And yeah, not to sort of labour the point, but the piece I said before, the resilience. I say, if you're working on those sort of 3 pieces, it's a great starter for 10. I think there's then also other things that you can get involved with, and from a voluntary perspective, like if your company has employee resource groups or anything sort of voluntarily, if you feel that you can pick that up, it's great. I think it's also one worth looking at what that gives you in terms of career development, because running an employee network shows leadership skills, it shows all of that. So it's then looking at not just doing it because it's for this, but looking at how that can all be used to help develop your career even further.
Excellent point. Sophia, did you want to come in?
I agree completely. Excellent points. I would say in terms of like the where do you start? Um, please don't think that you need a role that has EDI or DEI or anything even in the people or org development space before you're doing the tasks. For example, I did my first like data gathering task in a context where I think I may have even been volunteering in that particular role. So I did a data gathering task on why essentially teenage girl students were not using a common room, and they assumed like originally the assumptions were, is it because they need magazines? Maybe let's find out a bit more about what they'd like there. And actually it turned out to be there was some sexual harassment happening and there needed to be a little bit of behavioral intervention happening, or looking at a bit of awareness around what appropriate conduct is, and so a bit of sexual harassment awareness. So it ended up identifying an issue because of doing that task that wasn't in a job spec, wasn't in a clearly briefed internship. Also, like exactly as Alice said, joining like an employee resource group. Something to remember is a lot of the things that informalized and including like leadership, EDI and DEI roles, many of those things will sometimes be done informally or formally by people who didn't hold those titles or those remits. Let's say an organization doesn't have a department, doesn't have a role, maybe doesn't even have an HR team or an external comms team. Sometimes it will be internal stuff that said, you know what, we need a policy on this, or you know what, this keeps happening. Why aren't we talking about this? I've seen staff with completely different titles draft up their organization's statement in response to the Black Lives Matter movement, in response to Me Too. I've seen employees who'd never done it before preparing response frameworks for when discriminatory statements and sometimes even slurs are made. People have done really specific and big tasks before, and those are all things that are experience. It's not about the title, it's about what you're actually doing, because these names will change.
Great, thank you. Miriam, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I think just to add that some practical bits, making sure you're aware of all the different audiences and stakeholders that are involved in an organisation or a sector, and again being able to communicate at all those different levels with different stakeholders. I would say, because I think somebody asked in the chat as well about the training. If you're interested in finding some free EDI training, have a look on Eventbrite. There's quite a lot on that. And then top skills from me would be being able to horizon scan. And if you have the time, have a dig about in case law and see what you can find there as well, because they're all useful bits and pieces to know.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I did just want to I know we're very close to the end, but just one quick question, if maybe you can just each give a brief answer. If we have people joining us today who are maybe not looking to pursue EDI as a full career, but maybe are just looking to utilize their lived experience either in a current role where they're already employed for something else, or perhaps as like a freelance, getting involved with research or testimonies, or however these kind of activities are carried out, what your tips might be for where to find those opportunities, or just how to go about getting them, if you have any.
Yeah, for me, definitely, because we have got 47 wildlife trusts. Get in touch with your local one if you're interested in doing some EDI work. There are plenty of opportunities. So yeah, I would say, just contact people, put yourself out there. It can be a little bit scary the first few times, but when you realize how valuable your knowledge and information is, you'll do brilliantly. So yeah, just talk to people.
Brilliant, thank you. Sophia or Alice, did either of you want to come in?
I would say, can you repeat the question again? It went out of my mind just now.
Don't worry. If you have lived experience that you'd like to kind of utilize, but not necessarily in a full-time EDI role.
Absolutely. You do not need to do it as a full-time role, and your work is no less impactful. In fact, for a number of years, I've been working on it since 2011. I did not do it as a full-time role until perhaps 2022, 2023, because I wanted to keep up my external campaigning, lobbying roles as well. What I will say is you can even be a specialist in a particular area. You don't need to do EDI. You could be, for example, a disability inclusion or disability and justice specialist. You could, for example, be someone who specializes in, you know what, I want to do accessibility and access needs. You could be someone who specializes in, I want to actually make sure organizations understand the social model of disability and they understand the concepts behind disability justice and that they're not just staying at awareness level. I've seen people who have very busy, booked up careers doing very specialist and specific areas, and lived experience is expertise. There are also people who will exclusively do speaking engagements, lunch and learns, going into companies, and also doing like sector or sector agnostic conferences where they are public speaking, as that's their EDI career. Even if it's part-time, it's still an EDI career. So you don't need to do all areas. And maybe you'll expand, maybe it will change. It is there, the work is there, the demand exists, and the need exists.
Great, thank you. Alice, did you just want to add anything?
Yeah, I would say that if get involved in small initiatives, reach out to your organization's inclusion and diversity lead, whatever that job title might be, or if people and culture more widely do it, reach out to them, because I can tell you from first-hand experience they would bite your hand off for some help with any initiative, any event. And see if you like it. I think that's the main thing. As I said before, I think I've never really had a set plan on what's next. And to be honest, even if I did, it's never really gone that way, because an opportunity has arisen before then, which has kind of knocked what I thought was going to happen out of the park, and I've ended up doing something else. And so I think it's being open to those opportunities, being curious, asking people if you can get involved in stuff. It only has to be sort of one event. It allows you to meet new people, see if you like it. If actually you think it's really not for me, that's fine. The person will still have been grateful for your support, and you've made a new contact in the business. So yeah, I would just say be open, reach out to people, because I don't know anybody that would say, no, I don't want your help with my to-do list as long as my arm.
Great point. Thank you so much. Well, I think we have come to the end of the session, and although I could keep talking for hours to the three of you, I think we will have to draw it to a close, but thank you so much. So I really want to thank Sophia, Alice and Miriam for joining us. We will, we've shared their details, but if you have any follow-up questions or resources, we can share those as well. And this session is recorded, so we will share this on our YouTube channel so you can catch up. We've also shared a poll for the first time. We're trying this out, a poll for feedback in the session. So if that's popped up, we'd be very grateful if you could fill it in, just because we're always wanting to make sure that our sessions are what you need as our members and as our wider community. But thank you so much for joining us. Our next session will be I believe it's the 23rd of April, and it's on getting into business. So we'll be talking all about working in businesses, setting up businesses, and working with them as freelance individuals. So yeah, thank you so much to everyone. And if you're a DLN member, we'll be having our private closed discussion now. So please do join that other link. Otherwise, I hope to see you all soon. And thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.